Yo, it's your boy JTG, aka Jay the God, one half of the illest tag team ever, Crime Time, and you are watching Pro Wrestling Planet. And we all know Pro Wrestling Planet is about that money. Yeah, that money. Yeah. Cheer!
WrestleMania 15 took place on March 28, 1999 in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania at the First Union Center. This WrestleMania took place at what many would say was the pinnacle of the Attitude Era. The WWE had finally turned around the ratings war with WCW just a year prior and had not looked back. This show features a subtitle entitled The Ragin Climax. Perhaps it was thought that WrestleMania 15 would be the absolute end of the Stone Cold Steve Austin Vince McMahon storyline. However, as history would prove, that storyline would continue for quite a while past this time. The gate for this show did close to $1.5 million, and the show packed a buy rate of around 800,000, which was not a dramatic increase from the year prior, which drew around 730,000 buys, but was still up significantly, and WWE had to have been happy with the result of this show overall. Of course, the main storyline going into WrestleMania 15 was Stone Cold Steve Austin against Vince McMahon. This story was the backdrop of the entire company from the time WrestleMania 14 took place all the way until this show here. After a couple of back and forth title runs for Austin, The Rock ended up with the championship, putting Austin in the place of chaser and challenger. The Rock had spent most of the year prior as a heel, but for a brief moment had turned to babyface and was actually rivaling Austin for status at the top of the card. So the decision was made to turn Rock heel again at Survivor Series in November 1998. And that night, Rock won the WWE Championship while aligning himself with the evil Mr. McMahon. From there, Austin would be distracted by The Undertaker for a few months, but would end up winning the Royal Rumble in January of 1999 and go on to challenge The Rock in the main event of WrestleMania 15. It's amazing looking back at this card and just thinking that it's rather unmemorable, although at the time, everyone in the company was so over that the matchups were almost secondary to just what the product was in general. Keep in mind, this being the Attitude Era, where crudeness and attitude was the norm and front and center. Undoubtedly, to me, it was the star of the show. The rest of the card, modest at best. The technical second main event, I would suppose, since it was before the main event, was probably one of the worst Hell in the Cell matches ever held between Big Boss Man and The Undertaker, which ended with The Undertaker hanging Boss Man from the cell, which traumatized 10-year-old kids across the country. Prior to that, we had a European title match between Shane McMahon and X-Pac. The second main storyline of the show would have had to have been the saga of Degeneration X versus the Corporation. Now, understand that earlier in the evening, China, who had left DX to join the corporate ministry group thing, reunited with Triple H and seemed to return to DX. However, Triple H would then turn on X-Pac here, and the duo would then be ushered back into the corporation as a duo. Does that make sense? As mentioned earlier, in the Attitude Era, of course, skin did certainly sell, and the WWF Women's Champion Sable was a huge part of that movement, for better or for worse. She would defeat Tori on this show to retain the championship, and also, as mentioned, the match before that was Triple H versus Kane. That's where the China return took place, and Keep in mind, this was in the thick of the Vince Russo booking era, and this show, for better or for worse, you could actually have a subtitle of it named Russo-Mania. The match prior to that saw Road Dogg retain the Intercontinental Championship in a four-way match with Goldust, Ken Shamrock, and Val Venus. This was a match that was really just all about getting those mid-card acts onto the show. Mankind defeated the Big Show Paul White in his very first WrestleMania appearance, which I remember being pretty disappointed but optimistic about Big Show's future. And actually, soon after this, he'd be sent home to lose weight at the request of Vince McMahon. This match was to decide who would be the special referee in the main event between Austin and Rock. And although Mankind won the match, Big Show tried to make sure that he would not make it to ref the match in the main event. But eventually, Mankind, of course, did return to call the match. And he did so at the ever so right moment, and all was well in the world. The next match we'll talk about has been the subject of much controversy over the years. Bart Gunn was declared the champion of the first and last WWF Brawl for All tournament. This tournament is a famous disaster that the WWE held in the summer of 1998, where basically they decided to take a bunch of wrestlers and put them into a legit shoot fight tournament. And while there are many onions to that story, we'll keep it basic and just say that a bunch of guys got hurt. The guy they wanted to win didn't, and the guy that did win ended up being this guy named Bart Gunn, who was then booked to have a legit boxing match at WrestleMania 15 here with Butterbean, who proceeded to absolutely destroy Bart in a matter of seconds, forever leaving Bart's career in the stable. The tag team titles were successfully defended by Owen Hart and Jeff Jarrett as they defeated D'Lo Brown and Test. D'Lo and Test won a tag team battle royal prior to the show on the Sunday Night Heat pre-show to get the title shot. However, both teams were kind of makeshift afterthought teams, albeit Owen and Jarrett were making the best of their pairing. But sadly, this would end up being Owen's final WrestleMania appearance. There was then a triple threat match for the Hardcore Championship, which would be the first time this title was defended at WrestleMania, as it was created mainly as a joke just months earlier. And Billy Gunn came in as the champion but lost to Bob Holly. Al Snow was also present during the match. And the show, of course, closed, as mentioned, with The Rock defending the championship against Stone Cold Steve Austin. Austin would defeat The Rock in about 17 minutes. Up to that point, you could say that this was the pair's best match against each other, and would be far from their last time, as time would tell. This was actually another pivotal moment for Austin, as the company had been riding high on his success. And this show further cemented, in this case, that there was no question that Stone Cold was indeed the guy and the main star in the company. Vince McMahon and Steve Austin would have loved to keep this going even further, but as we'll find out in the next chapter, things took quite the unexpected turn.